Hey guys, what's up? So we have a new update on Advanced Server and it's patch 1.7.29. First on our list is the buff on Roger. The developer said he's left in the dust, so they are improving his skills. His first skill on both forms will now have higher damage and more defense stats when in wolf form. Next is Xborg. The developer said it's too easy to remove his armor in the early game, so they will increase his base HP. That's an additional 176 points of HP. Next is Eve. They believe the nerf on her ultimate range was necessary to give her opponents a fighting chance. To compensate, they will increase the damage of her first skill. They also shortened the cooldown of her ultimate while adding more damage to the top version. So if you're an Eve main, you better get used to her new ultimate range. Next is the buff on Yin. They said his nerf last patch was too harsh, so they are buffing his ultimate. He will now get more defense stats while inside the domain. Next is the nerf on Melissa. Her first and second skill now has longer cooldowns in the early levels of the game. According to the developers, it's a way to limit her early and mid-game dominance. Next is the nerf on Balmond. They lowered the damage cap on his ultimate when hitting a non-hero unit by 500 points. They said it was too easy for Balmond to steal objectives like turtles and lords. Is it fair or does he deserve it? Next is the buff on Beatrix. The developer said the last nerf was too harsh, so they are putting back some power. The basic attacks of her sniper and grenade gun will now deal more damage. Meanwhile, the ultimate of her shotgun and submachine gun will have better attack scaling. Welcome back, Bia mains. Next is the nerf on Julian. Even after numerous nerfs, he still possessed an immense ability to snowball out of control. To balance, they had to lower the damage of his enhanced second and third skill. But in exchange, his normal second and third skill damage are increased. Next is the adjustment on Akai. His ultimate now has longer cooldowns in the late levels. But in exchange, its damage is increased by 20 to 30 points. Next is the adjustment on Hylos. Last week's patch on his second skill was too strong, so they are toning it down. Compared to official server, it's still a buff because of the few stacks required. And the attack speed reduction is way better than the official server version. Next is the buff on Terizla. Higher attack scaling on his second skill. Please don't revert this just like on the last official server update. Next is Aulus. His last advanced server update was too strong, so they are lowering it this time. Enhanced basic attack is lowered as well as his second skill heal. Don't worry because compared to official server, it's still a buff. Next is Fredrinn. His ultimate will now deal more damage based on his crystal energy, and the heal he gets when using his ultimate is now doubled. As you can see, the heal from his passive is amplified if the damage comes from his ultimate. Next is Hayabusa. Additional 10 points of damage on marked targets when using his ultimate. But it's only for late game. Early game damage remains the same. Next is Harith. They adjusted the buff they gave from the last update on his second skill. Lower shield and basic attack damage. But if we compare this to official server, it's still a buff. This means his advanced server version has higher shield and damage scaling. Next is the buff on Aulus. They lowered the mana cost on her ultimate in the early levels. And jungle creeps will now drop blood orbs. Are we going to see jungler Aulus on the next update? Next is the adjustment on Floryn. They lower the shield of her ally when they are equipped with her Flower of Hope. Next is the buff on Kaja. They improved his paralyzed passive by increasing its duration and damage reduction. The maximum stacks is also lowered, making it easier to reach its full effect. Skill 1 now has a shorter cooldown, but with a stronger heal. The first target will give 200 heal, while the succeeding ones are reduced by 30%. They removed the magic defense reduction on his ultimate while improving his base defense and HP growth. so he is now tankier and has better sustain. This is looking extremely good for Kaja. You might want to try him on Experience Lane after this update. Next is the buff on Barats. His ultimate now heals more. And he now gains more passive stacks when resurrecting. At max level, he gets 25 stacks. Next is Zhask. They lowered the cooldown of his first skill, but in exchange, cooldowns will no longer be refunded when the spawn is killed. And they lowered the damage of his third skill. The developer said it's now more of a crowd control instead of a damaging skill. Next is Valentina. She is disabled in advanced server, so I can't test her out. But they made some changes to her skills. Her lifesteal ratio from her passive skill is lowered, and they cancelled the nerf on her dash last week. This means her second skill is back to its normal version. Next is the buff on Carmilla. Her ultimate now has higher damage and longer immobilize effect. Next is the buff on Belerick. They lowered the mana requirement on his second skill by 30 to 40 points. Next is the adjustment on Martis. They toned down the extra attack he gets when at full stacks, from 200 to now 150 at max level, which is just fair, right? Next is the buff on Harley. His second skill now has a shorter cooldown. This will make him harder to catch. Next is the new hero, Joy. They improved her skills so that players have more room for errors. Skill 1 duration is now 2 seconds, and enemies will be slowed. Skill 2 now has shorter cooldown and slightly bigger AoE. There's now an extended time after missing the beat, so that players can still use the skill even after a miss, and some damage adjustment on her ultimate. This made Joy slightly easier to use now that she has the protection period after the beat. And based on the event page, she will be available on November 18 on official server. Are you ready for this agile Leonine? Next are the new backgrounds for the Halloween skins of Franco, Carrie, Lolita, Leomord, Angela, and Lilia. Next is the update on invalid matches. It will no longer affect your hero's win rate if an invalid match is triggered. Last one is the new user interface for the daily quest. I really like these past few updates. They are getting bolder in terms of adjusting heroes, which is a good sign. It makes the game more interesting because more heroes will be usable. And as always, it's fun to find hidden gems in ranked games. So what can you say about the update? Are you excited for these changes? Let me know what you guys think in the comment section. That's all for this video. Stay safe and thank you for watching.